a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
Your one-stop shop. All things women's hoops. Mia O'Brien, USA Today's Mitchell Northam. Let's cut right to the chase, Mitch. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube for this week's installment, a shout out to our friends at OG Triangle Media. Make sure you like this episode. You subscribe to the boys over at OG Triangle Media. If you are watching on YouTube, we're just not going to bury the lead. If my mouth looks weird, my husband tells me I am Two-Face from Batman because of the world's largest canker sore. So humor me as I favor one side of my mouth. But I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth, har, 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 with some of the topics that we're going to get into from the world of women's basketball. First things first, now that we got that little disclaimer out the way. Hi, Mitch. How are you? I know you have vacation coming up. You must be ready, primed and ready to go.
I don't know if it'll actually be vacation, but I am traveling to Maryland to see some family, and that should be good.
We love the great state of Maryland. As I was told today by one Cheyenne Sellers, the pride of Brenda Freese's Terrapins program.
That's right.
Maryland does more than crab cakes and lacrosse, folks, because they also do basketball very, very well. We may even hit on Cheyenne and her friends in the Upshot League a little bit later in the program. But first things first, we begin as we do each and every week here on the Women's Basketball Podcast with our starting five, the five biggest storylines from the world of women's hoops. Mitch, you got 3 of the 5 this week. I have 2. Where do we begin in the WNBA?
I wanted to have a quick conversation about Cheryl Reeve for a couple of reasons, and wanted to pose the question, is she the greatest coach in the history of the WNBA and the WNBA's 30 seasons? She was just inducted into the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame this past weekend alongside Candace Parker and Elena Deladon and a bunch of other people. She is 1 win away. She has now tied Mike Thibault, 1 win away now from owning the all-time regular season wins record in WNBA history, which the Lynx could get, I believe, on Friday is their next game. And we might actually talk about that game later on in our Making Money with Mitch segment. But I think just like looking at the numbers and kind of looking at who else has kind of done this for as long as Cheryl Reeve has, I think she is. I think she probably is the coaching GOAT in the WNBA. She and Van Chancellor are the only coaches who have 4 titles. Van Chancellor, of course, won those in the first 4 years of the league's existence with the Houston Comets on with an absolutely stacked roster: Tina Thompson, Cynthia Cooper, Cheryl Swoops, and Cheryl Reeve. Won her 4 championships kind of across the 2010s with teams that had Maya Moore and Sylvia Fowles and Simone Augustus and some really talented teams as well. And she's been to the finals a couple other times. And then I think you look at kind of this second version of the Lynx where they've kind of risen back to the top with Nafisa Collier. But now even doing what they're doing this season with Fee on the sidelines and Olivia Miles, not Miller, Chris Bosh, Olivia Miles, looking like an MVP candidate as a rookie and really kind of, I think, leading the Lynx into sort of their next era of whatever this is with Cheryl Reeve. Also has an Olympic gold medal. That's another nice point on the resume.
I think for the Yep.
So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of, kick off the starting 5 by giving Cheryl Reeve some flowers. And I think she is. I think she is our WNBA coaching GOAT at the moment. Of course, I think someone like Becky Hammon could put herself in that conversation, very soon, especially if this run of championships continues with Asia Wilson. But I think at the moment I would take Cheryl Reeve if you were asking me to do a draft of all-time WNBA head coaches.
It's a great place to start today's episode with the Minnesota Lynx, fresh off of Sunday's win over the Dallas Wings. We are recording this podcast on Monday, June 29th. You're listening to it midweek, this final week of June, first week of July, and the Minnesota Lynx are undoubtedly the top team in the WNBA. To the point of, number one, Van and the Houston Comets back in the 90s, the original dynasty, if you may, in this league, and then Becky Hammon. I would say this, and I think Olivia Miles is a great microcosm that only aids Cheryl Reeves' case. There goes the side mouth. Cheryl Reeves' case to be the GOAT coach of the WNBA. Rattle off for me some of those names that were on that Houston Comets championship dynasty run.
Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Tina Thompson. Okay. There are others, but I mean, that's 3 first ballot Hall of Famers right there.
And certainly the Lynx championship teams of the 2010s. There's lots of names that you already rattled off there too. But now Becky Hammon and the Las Vegas Aces, who are looking for their 4th title in 5 years, include names such as
A'ja Wilson, Chelsea Gray. Wasn't Candace Parker on one of those early Aces title teams?
I don't think. I think she was still on the Sky at that point.
Can't remember.
Kelsey Plum, obviously.
Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum. Yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, like when these careers all wrap up, when we're talking about this in 20 years, yeah, I think we're going to look back at this Aces run as having multiple Hall of Famers on it. I think A'ja Wilson and Chelsea Gray are locks, and then we'll see what else kind of shakes out.
This is not to say that the current iteration of the Lynx don't also have future Hall of Famers.
Sure.
But I think what aids Cheryl's case is someone like Olivia Miles. And I had this conversation actually with Trisha Stafford Odom, who's now the coach of the Charlotte Crown, but of course played once upon a time with the Houston Comets back in the day and Miami Soul. And, you know, we were talking about Olivia Miles, and we both said it's not a surprise to see what she's doing if you watched Olivia in her early years at Notre Dame pre-injury. This is who she was. She just was not getting the media exposure that she is now. At the same time, and we have discussed this before, she is able to play free and play her best basketball right now because of the positions her coach is putting her in, because of the team that is around her, because of the decisions that Cheryl makes. And certainly our friend Corey Close of UCLA went out of her way to say, look, Olivia Miles is still growing as a defender, but because Cheryl puts her in the right situations, you don't see those deficiencies. And I think that that's where this second act, if you may, of Cheryl in Minnesota could prove that she can, and I'm not suggesting Olivia Miles is not a lemon, but what I'm suggesting is she is taking players who are extremely talented and maximizing their potential. That's not to say Becky Hammon isn't doing that in Las Vegas. That is not to say that Van Chancellor didn't do that in Houston. But I think, and Nia Coffey would be a great example of this, go up and down that Lynx lineup, even Courtney Williams, the second act of her career. Players go to Minnesota, and on another team, maybe they're just a role player. But when you play for Cheryl Reeves, all of a sudden, you are part of an all-star lineup. And that, I think, speaks to coaching, much like last week's episode where the theme was coaching matters. That is why players like Olivia Miles are having the success that they are.
Yeah, I think, someone like Courtney Williams is somebody who has probably played the best basketball of her career with Cheryl Reeve. Alana Smith and Jess Shepard both got paid because of how they played for Cheryl Reeve last year. You mentioned, some of her old title teams, like the last title team that she had in 2017, Simone Augustus, Rebecca Brunson, Temi Fangbele, Sylvia Fowles, Natasha Howard, Renee Montgomery, Maya Moore, Lindsay Whalen, like really good roster, right? But, I think, like we said, like those players really maximized what their skills were under her.
And I think a lot of those players' profile and how we view them through the history lens is aided by the fact that they played on a team that was comprised of players who were playing at their absolute max. And I think a lot of that was due to coaching. And again, that's not to poo-poo what Becky is doing in Las Vegas. That's not to poo-poo what occurred in Houston in the early onset of this league. But I think it's just the reality of Cheryl Swoops was a name brand prior to the WM. Like, you play with Cheryl Swoops. Yeah. You play with any of those names. Like, you're probably going to be pretty good. Like, just, you throw A'ja Wilson and Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum in the same lineup. Yeah, it's probably going to be okay. Granted, Bill Lambier would disagree and say, maybe you do need the right coach. And so maybe Becky does eventually have a case to be made, Mitch. But great way to start today's episode. Again, especially in lieu of the Minnesota Lynx, the top team in the WNBA standings at 15-4. Becky Hammon's Las Vegas Aces, one game behind them at 14-5, and will play for the Commissioner's Cup this week. Let's keep it moving. 2 historic moments in the WNBA this past week, and it came from 2 players who, if I told you in 2024, not 2024, their stock was pretty high. One of their stocks was pretty high back then. If I told you in 2024, Mitch, that Marina Mabry was going to drop 53 points in a regular season WNBA game, if I told you in 2025, amidst all the drama with Chicago and the Sky, that Camila Cardoso would go 13 of 13 from the floor, a new WNBA record, which of those 2 sound more improbable to you because they just happened in a 5-day span?
I would say I probably would be more surprised. It depends on when you ask me. If you asked me in 2024, I would have said Mabry. I would have been more surprised by that. If you asked me at the start of the WNBA season, I would have been more surprised by Cardoso because of the really strong Unrivaled campaign that Marina Mabry had. But yeah, certainly both of them rewriting record books, this week, or at least Marina Mabry putting herself alongside some others at the top of the record book when it comes to the single game scoring record.
Yeah, let's table that for a second because I do want to make an aside comment about that. But in the meantime, back to our conversation at item number 1 in this week's starting 5. Coaching matters. To your point, Marina Mabry scored more points than anybody in Unrivaled this winter. And so maybe this more so speaks to the evolution of her game. When you give her the opportunity to be the lead dog, she can be your go-to de facto scorer and among the best in the league. But I also can't help but look at Marina Mabry's success so far with Toronto Tempo. I can't just look at it as an isolated instance without the presence of Sandy Brondello as her head coach. Like, that needs to be acknowledged as well.
Yeah, Sandy had to put her in position to do that, right? And Sandy had to create an offense that really emphasized Marina Mabry's three-point shot-making ability as the primary, focal point of that offense. Those were decisions made by Sandy Brondello. And, Marina Mabry, for the most of her career has been sort of a journeyman player. Gets drafted by the Sparks, goes to Dallas, goes to Chicago, goes to Connecticut, and also for the most part of her career was somebody who came off the bench. She finished in the top 4 of 6 Player of the Year voting 4 times before last season, where she was a full-time starter with the Connecticut Sun on a team that wasn't very good, if we're being completely honest. And then she's not even the first overall pick in the expansion draft this year. I think she went 6th. And then obviously, the Tempo gave her a big contract. And Sandy Brondello has decided to utilize her in this way. Marina Mabry currently, eyeing her first All-Star appearance ever. Some 8 seasons into her career. So yeah, it's all pretty impressive, the turnaround that she's having.
By the way, she was second fiddle on a national championship team at Notre Dame. And you could even argue she was the 3rd or 4th option on that team.
Yeah.
Especially with the ascension of Jess Shepard when she arrived from Nebraska. Arike Ogunbowale was the focal point of that 2018 national title team. Make no mistake about it. And Marina fell to the 2nd round to the Los Angeles Sparks in that loaded 2019 draft class. Like, people forget. And so much of it for me, because Kevin and I were talking about it through the lens of the NFL. And I jokingly texted our group chat and I said it to him, is she like a Sam Darnold, where maybe we got over our skis about who she was initially while she was in college, and then come to find, well, you know what? Maybe it took her a couple years, but it also took ending up in the right situation. And that's despite being coached by Muffet McGraw in college, one of the greatest coaches we've ever seen.
It's another point of a lot of times these players don't peak in college. Some of them do, and some of them never get better as pros. Some of them hit their peak their first, second season in the league. Some of them don't hit their peak until they're, Marina Mabry is going to be 30 in September. And I think she is at the peak of her powers right now. She leads the league in 3-point shots made per game with 3.6. She's 4th in the league in scoring. I would have loved to have known what the odds were on Marina Mabry getting the scoring title this year. I don't know if she's going to quite get there, but she's going to be in contention for it, and she should be an all-star this year.
We will still honor your Plum Dog way too early prediction, just because they'll refund you the money at any sports book, because she is out for the next 3.5 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
To the sidebar real quick. How'd you feel about her exiting at the 53-point plateau?
I was fine with it. The game
I was not.
The game was in hand at that point. I think they were up by like 17 points or something like that. Yeah.
They were up 30 at one point, but yes.
It sounded like Sandy Brondello wanted to keep her in. But Marina wanted to come out, and I sort of respect that. I think a little bit, like at that point, you've tied the record. Do you want to pile on in garbage time to get it?
To me, she has, and maybe this is because we're from the same neck of the woods.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to Cheyenne Sellers about this now because her fiance is also from that neck of the woods. Like, the Mabrys always prided themselves as the most competitive sports family in Monmouth County. And so for me, I was screaming at the TV when she checked out. I was like, dude.
Well, maybe she looked at the score and said, well, this is no longer competitive and I'm good.
But then also like, oh, I want to be tied with Asia. Like I gave our friend Rebecca Kopelman this story. Like, and I said it to Kevin as well. Back when I was covering the Iowa Hawkeyes, quick little brief history lesson on the men's basketball side. Chris Street, legendary All-American, unfortunately passes away his junior year back in the early 90s during in a car crash. And he still owned the single season free throw record in men's basketball program history. Jordan Bohannon is about to eclipse that number. Chris Street's parents are in the front row, and he intentionally missed it so that they were tied. Posthumously honoring one of the greatest players in Iowa basketball history. So, like, I'm cool with that. Like, that was a really poignant moment, and like Chris's parents were overwhelmed. Like, I like sitting there watching it, you were like chills. I did not get chills. I'm like, Marina, just do it. Like, get over the hump. Bam Adebayo. Sorry, Asia. Bam Adebayo is our single game scoring record holder in the NBA, the MNBA, folks. Like, come on, man. Just do it. Like, and that was in a blowout game for the Miami Heat. Like, I don't know. Just be a competitor. That was.
I was okay with it.
Yeah. Moving on. We got to move on.
I want to say something real quick about Cardoso.
Yes.
I believe Dawn Staley said before the season started that Angel not being there would be a benefit to Cardoso. And I thought it was interesting in the first game back for Courtney Vandersloot, or first or second game back, I can't remember exactly.
That's Coach Sloot to you and GM Sloot. Continue.
And, despite all that has been said about Courtney Vandersloot, she is still a legitimate starting point guard in the WNBA. And all of a sudden, we give Carmela Cardoso a legitimate point guard, and she does that. And so, once again, Dawn Staley, perhaps correct.
I do want to remind the Sky to try to wear their black uniforms as much as possible, just because, unfortunately, the blue uniforms had me a little concerned about how bulked up Camilla got. I say that lovingly, just because I was like, this is not doing her any favors from an aesthetic standpoint. And like, I do think she did bulk up this offseason because she recognized she can be the true five on that team with no Angel Reese. And just trust me, Camilla, for your own sake, ask them to wear the blue with the black with the blue accents, not that blue uniform thing you wore against the Fever. Keeping it moving, Mitch. Number 3 in this week's starting 5. Oh boy, back to Project B we go.
Well, yeah, I wanted to bring up Project B again because it feels like every week now we are getting an announcement of a player either signing with Project B or signing with Unrivaled. And I think we're about to see these two leagues kind of go head-to-head for the talent pool in terms of where players are going to play in the offseason. Unrivaled this week, I think last week they signed Flau'jae Johnson. This week they added Maureen Johannes to a multi-year deal. Of course, last week we talked about how Project B added AZ Fudd. Project B has a number of other all-star players, Nneka Ogwumike, Alana Smith,
Kelsey Mitchell,
Alyssa Thomas, on and on and on. And it's really interesting, kind of the dynamic between the two leagues. I was actually talking about this with, I believe, Tyler Byram on his Believe in the W podcast last week. I was a guest on that, talking about just Unrivaled and Project B. For most of the WNBA's existence until about 5-6 years ago, you can really put the turning point at like COVID. Players all the time went overseas in the offseason, right? And they played in all sorts of countries, right? Diana, like the best players were playing overseas in Russia or wherever. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Simone Augustus, all these players, right? And then that started to turn at COVID, and then it really turned when Brittany Griner was, falsely imprisoned in Russia for months and months and months. And then it turned even more when Unrivaled arrived and said, here is a safe domestic league where you can play for a little while and make some money, and you don't have to go overseas, right? But we are still seeing some players go overseas. Brianna Stewart went overseas and played in Eurobasket this past offseason.
In addition to Unrivaled, by the way.
Right. Project B, I think what they are offering is, number one, we don't know what the salary numbers are yet, but they keep saying publicly they are at the top of all women's sports leagues worldwide. And so, so you're offering big time money. So that's attractive, right? They're also offering, the opportunity to play 5-on-5 basketball instead of 3-on-3. So you're using some different skill sets, the same skill sets that you would use in the W instead of 3-on-3. They are also offering, and I think this was the thing that was most attractive to AZ Fudd, per an interview I think she gave in Forbes, basically the opportunity to kind of travel the world, because they are going to use this kind of F1 style touring model where they're going to go play in Spain and they're going to play in Tokyo and they're going to play.
How many teams are they going to have is my question.
I believe they are going to have 6 teams of 11 players each.
Wow.
And I don't think that all 11, so that's 66 players total. I don't think all of those players are going to be like top flight WNBA players. I think each team is going to have a couple, star WNBA types at the top. And then maybe the rest of that roster will be filled out by some really good players who already play in some of these European leagues, right? And so, but, that's what they're offering. Now, the kind of pushback and the little bit of angst, I think, about going to play in Project B is like, okay, where's the money coming from? Is the Saudi investment fund involved in this? Project B keeps saying, no, they're not. But then they say, well, they're funding this company that we're partnering with and blah, 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 blah. And okay, so does that mean you're going to play a game in Saudi Arabia at some point? I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Dubai, probably at least.
Right. Right. Maybe they play a game in Dubai.
I don't want to say that's like the cover up, but it's like, oh, we're not playing in Saudi, but we are playing.
Yeah. They're not funding the league, but we are going to play a game in their backyard. So I don't know. The other thing is like, Project B is going to be on YouTube basically. I don't think they have an American broadcast partner yet. Unrivaled has the Turner Sports deal. They're on HBO, all that good stuff. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see these two go head to head. And I think the AZ Fudd thing is super interesting because she was a player who had an NIL deal with Unrivaled and then say, actually, I'm good. I'm going to go play in Project B. And I thought it was noteworthy that Olivia Miles and now Maureen Johannes have signed multi-year deals with Unrivaled. So there's less of an out there.
Yes.
And I think it's something to watch. These two kind of off-season leagues go head to head.
Yes, and any other off-season leagues that may or may not exist or may not exist in the future, how this affects them and how this affects their longevity. Because if Project B, listen, we live in a capitalistic society, whether you like it or not. If Project B is offering the most money and the most opportunity, that is where the players will go. Sorry. Right. It's just the reality of the world that we live in. Let's keep it moving because something tells me we may bring up Project B in some of these leagues that are offering stakes in the league, more money. That may wow, there we go, words again. That may come up during our favorite segment, the beef of the week. But first, back to the WNBA we go. On Sunday, the Mystics and the Fire went to not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 overtimes, Mitch. Half the team fouled out, both teams. I don't really know what we were doing by the end of it, but credit to both teams, Washington and Portland. They played their hearts out. What's interesting and why I bring up this noteworthy matchup from the week that was is because the Portland and Washington are two teams that are teetering on that. Are you in the playoff mix? Are you still in rebuilding mode? They're kind of feisty, but I really don't know how to slice it. Maybe they're still a player away. And so tell me this, in an absolute gauntlet, in an absolute marathon between those two teams, in terms of this year, whose stock are you buying, Portland or Washington?
I think in terms of how far these teams could go, if they could be playoff teams, I would still probably buy the Mystics stock. Even though I like the direction that Portland is heading in, I think that they got the head coaching hire right. I still, though, I look at these two rosters and I say to myself, the Mystics just have more talent. Like, the Portland Fire do not have a player of Sonia Citron's caliber. Even in this game, like, you had Michaela, and I don't know how to say her last name.
Anyaware.
Dropping 30 points, which was kind of wild. Like, Kiki Iriafin, Shakira Austin. I look at kind of the top to bottom roster makeup and I say, yeah, the Mystics have a higher ceiling. Like, Sonia Citron is playing at an all-star level right now. And while I like what the Fire are doing, and kind of how they've assembled sort of this, I think we kind of called them before, like this band of misfit toys, so to speak. You put Megan Gustafson in a starting role. You put Emily Engstler out there. Sarah Ashley Barker, all these other players. And they have something that works. In terms of like long term, I still think they're a few players away from really like making a serious run in the playoffs. But I like what they're doing.
We could literally go 1 through 11, and we could even include the head coach. And like, I almost want to say like advantage who, because I would say for the head coach, it's advantage Portland. In terms of the personnel and having an A1 all-star to lead your team, it's the Washington Mystics. In terms of your front court depth, it's also probably the Washington Mystics. But at the same time, in terms of your three-point shooting, as great as Sonia Citron has been, and as much as Anyaware went off on Sunday, I'm still probably taking Bridget Carlton, Carla Light, and the rest of the Portland Fire, including our friend Sarah Ashley Baller. And so two teams that it was obviously the game of the week in terms of just sheer novelty. But I also think that in terms of being on that bubble, which as of this writing, the Washington Mystics are in the 8th seed for the WNBA playoffs if the season were to end today. I do think that it's very interesting to look at, because I've also heard the critique that Washington is still a player away. They still either need Lauren Betts to ascend, or they need to bring in another bona fide star in order to compete with the Dallas, Atlanta, up-and-coming teams, as well as the perennial powers in New York, Vegas, and of course, Minnesota.
I think what the Mystics need is really another playmaking guard that is consistent night in, night out. Because like on this night, it was Michaela, and then Georgia Amor plays 12 minutes and finishes with 2 points.
She got hurt and left. Yep.
Right. And Lucy Olson is there. Like, I just don't know like who the Robin is to Sonia Citron's Batman in terms of in the backcourt.
Yeah.
Their front court is very good. The combo of Kiki Iriafin and Shakira Austin. And then you have Lauren Betts and Cody McMahon coming off the bench. But I do think they are missing a piece in terms of like getting to that next step.
The Portland Fire are 8-12, by the way, which I don't think anyone would have seen coming on expansion draft night. And so a shout out to the WNBA's, we'll call it the middle class. They're jockeying for position in what's been a loaded standings. Just once you get past the bottom of the standings. But hey, listen, Courtney Vandersloot is back. The Chicago Sky have a fighting chance, and the Phoenix Mercury. Well, we'll talk about that. I'm sure in just a little bit. Let's round out this week's starting five with a little homage to the college game and one of the best social media clips from Monday afternoon.
Yeah, Juju Watkins is ready to be back. She is healthy. She is ready to rock and roll. We had a story at USA Today Sports about her looking stronger than ever. It's been, I think, 14 months since her injury. We had a reporter, Jordan Mendoza, out there who talked with Juju. I'll just share a little bit of her quote. "I feel great. Really blessed to just be here, getting feeling back to myself, being able to practice with the team. It's been a long time coming. I've just been working out, grinding every day so that I could be in this position. So to see all the hard work kind of pay off right now, it's really fulfilling." So I would fully expect Juju Watkins to be a full go when the season begins in November. We all do this thing in sports, no matter what sport you cover, especially if you cover a college sport. So like the moment the buzzer sounded on the UCLA South Carolina national championship game, I had a way too early top 25 ready to go. And I had USC at the top of that because UCLA lost everybody that they lost, and this was pre-transfer portal. UConn was losing AZ Foot and a couple other pieces, even though Sarah Strong's coming back. And South Carolina also losing a couple key pieces when you talk about Raven Johnson and Tanai Latson and on and on and on. USC is getting a National Player of the Year back in the rotation after making the second round of the NCAA tournament without her. They bring back Jazzy Davidson, who was the National Freshman of the Year this past season. And they're also adding, I think, the nation's number one freshman. And so they're going to be right there in the mix to make the Final Four this year. We'll see how the bracket breaks. Bracket luck is real. But I expect them to be the favorite to win the Big Ten and to make the Final Four this year.
The social media clip I was referring to, beyond the USA Today feature that also ran on Monday, was that USC's women's basketball Twitter account, and I believe the Instagram as well, simply posted a video of Juju sitting down in front of the camera and giving a bit of a smirk as if to signal, yes, she is back. Look out, college basketball. With that said, and I want to tie this back to Olivia Miles, I am so glad that more players, and granted, the timing of Juju's ACL tear really left no question of whether or not she would sit out all of last year. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad we are seeing more players follow Paige Beckers' lead and sitting out an entire season. Yeah. And I bring that up, and Olivia Miles actually was the original.
Yeah, she did that too.
I bring it up because, again, when it comes to ACL tears, I always go back to Cam Robinson, the Jaguars' former left tackle, telling me that after he tore his ACL the third week of September in 2018, he did not feel 100% back to himself until September of 2020. And that is why I am, number one, very interested to see if this is Juju Watkins' final season in college ball. I think if they win the national title, she's the number one pick in the WNBA draft, and that's that. If they don't, which, hey, listen, there's a lot of really good teams. This is not a college basketball preview episode, but there are a lot of very good teams primed for deep runs in March this upcoming season. If they don't, I think she comes back. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Number one, because of NIL. And number two, because I don't know if she's going to be the full version of Juju Watkins in 2026, 2027. And I bring up Olivia Miles because you know what? Maybe we really shouldn't be that surprised at what we're seeing this year because she is now 3 years removed, or technically this is her third full season post her knee injury once upon a time in South Bend.
Yeah. And now Juju Watkins, I don't think she would do this, but with the new 5-5 rule, she could not only come back for a year after this one, but also another year. And so we'll see how that plays out. Or actually, I don't know, because I guess
so it'd be
her injury year would count as a year. Mm-hmm. Still trying to get the hang of this. Anyways, so she could play, this year and next year if she wanted to. I think it will all depend on how the USC season finishes. Like if they win the national title, she probably goes to the draft. That being said, I will make a prediction. If Juju Watkins enters the 2027 WNBA draft, she will not be the number one overall pick.
Who will be?
Madison Booker. I think Madison Booker will be the number one overall pick.
Is Sarah Strong staying at UConn for 5 years then?
She will stay at least 4. I don't think age-wise.
That would time up.
Yeah, I don't think
this is her third year. Sorry, so she won't be 20. Yes, I see what you're saying.
I don't think she would be eligible to enter the WNBA draft. In 2027, age-wise, she's 20. Yeah, she's not going to turn 21 until February. Okay. So she would not be eligible to enter the 2027 WNBA draft. But I say that because a lot of WNBA people I've talked to, and college people too, they were telling me if Madison Booker was eligible this past year in 26, she would have been the number one overall pick. I think just because of her mix of size and unicorn skills, someone who is big enough to play the 4, but also has the skills to play point guard if need be. And has drawn some comparisons to Kevin Durant and all that. So I think a lot of WNBA coaches and GMs are kind of salivating on what Madison Booker can be at the pro level.
Meanwhile, Hannah Hidalgo is listening to this and clipping it, and she's going to unleash it onto the world next April. Just right.
Where did you find some Madison Booker?
Listen, like I said, Hannah, Olivia, Marina, when you're built in New Jersey, like there is like this little part of you that is just so competitive. Chip. You're saving every receipt. That's why I'm still upset at Marina for not trying to score 54 points last Thursday. All right, it's time. We know why you're here. Let's hit it, Dimitri.
Pure beef.
Caitlin Clark is featured in the Beef of the Week.
Who?
Again. She's number 22. Plays for the Indiana Fever. I'm not going to turn the camera around, but I got a really, really nice wedding present from my good friend Anthony Bonelli. It's Caitlin back when she was a hero. She wasn't a villain at Iowa. It's this beautiful collage of her against Rutgers. So it's my New Jersey, Iowa roots, but it's very beautiful. It's up on the wall here. So shout out to AB. We are going to discuss the Caitlin Clark, Alyssa Thomas ongoing discourse in a different light than perhaps you have heard before, because we do not want to contribute to the echo chamber. That is, how are we deciphering this Zapruder film that is a screen grab and we're watching it in slow-mo? And it's a bigger question about the officials. We did that for Beef of the Week last week, so we don't need to go down that road again. Instead, Mitch and I want to return to something that apparently through the news cycle that is the way it is in 2026, we've lost the plot on. We've lost the plot on a lot of things, but we've also forgotten a very important plot, which is, Mitch, about like 5 months ago, Cathy Engelbert was like enemy number one in professional sports. Thank you, Roger Goodell, Gary Bettman, and so many before her who previously held that mantle. And for whatever the reason, we've just kind of let her off the hook, and we've kind of said, this is going on with Caitlin. We've got, even the drama. Our friend Cole Thompson reminded me today with AZ Fudd, Paige Beckers, and the Dallas Wings PR team, like all these little sideshows going on. And there's no one in the league office stepping in or releasing a statement or just trying to defend the actions of one of the 15 member institutions. And, it's because ratings are up. And it's because, as our friends at No Cap Space said, as long as business is booming and sponsors are lining up and players are interested in being a part of the WNBA and fans are interested in putting their butts in the seats and more cities are launching bids to bring a WNBA franchise to their hometown. As long as all that's happening and the dollars and the cents make sense, then it doesn't really matter that we've got all the vitriol online and that people are exhausted watching WNBA games because of the officiating and because of the discourse that surrounds each game. Because you know what? It's a bottom line business, Mitch. And I appreciated Andrew from No Cap Space's great profile and great column on the subject. And it was something that even prior to reading his column, we were planning on looking at it through this lens here today, because ultimately the biggest question that I have with this beef between Caitlin Clark, Alyssa Thomas, whether or not she intentionally meant to put a fist to her neck, whatever, is it a flagrant and is it not a flagrant? My bigger question is, where is the adult in the room to try to put the toothpaste back in the tube? I understand once it's out, it's hard to put it back in, but someone's got to try, and I don't know who that is right now.
Yeah, so just to get this out of the way, it was absolutely a flagrant foul. I explained it this way to someone on our internal work call, actually, at USA Today. What Alyssa Thomas did is I admittedly was a dirty high school football player. I played defensive line. That is something that I would have done to an opponent at the bottom of a pile.
And I may or may not, as a dirty 5'2" goalie who is undersized, may or may not have done to players on a corner kick when there would be a bit of a pile. So yes.
Yeah. Here's the problem. The problem is that, once again, the WNBA is behind, and the WNBA is reactive instead of proactive. And this is another thing, I think, the poster that came out last week, right? Like,
that's true. That also existed in the last.
So I don't want to get too deep in on that. If you want to read my thoughts and opinions about the poster, I wrote a column about it at USA Today. Is it blowing something out of proportion? Maybe, but I think the bigger thing here is like that poster and the Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark incident was the epitome of what the WNBA is guilty of far too often, which is incompetence, a lack of oversight, and a void of just creativity and innovation and trying to get out in front of something. And that is what I think the WNBA has been guilty of for the entirety of Cathy Engelbert's tenure as commissioner. They are always reactive instead of proactive. I think when you talk about,
I think that part of why they're reactive is because they lack, in my opinion, the most critical skill any human being can have in 2026, as we've discussed previously, the ability to read the room.
Yes, absolutely. The Alyssa Thomas, Caitlin Clark thing would not have blown up the way it did, in my opinion, if the call was made in real time, or even, the next stoppage in play, they went back and looked at it and said, you know what, that's a flagrant 2, and tossed her from the game. I think there would have been a small segment of fans that would have said, well, that's not enough. She should be banned for life. But a lot of people, I think level heads would have said, that was the right call. Good job, WNBA officials. But again, I think also, when you look at all the problems with officiating that we're having this season, so they spent all this offseason with this officiating task force, and they said, we're gonna do better, we're gonna crack down. Their version of doing better is just calling more fouls, but they're still missing key moments like this. And so when you look for a reason why, I think you have to look at the top, and everything trickles down from the top. And Cathy Engelbert is sitting at the top, okay? And so Cathy Engelbert deserves the blame here. And I look at the entirety of her tenure as WNBA commissioner, which I believe began in 2019 or
right before the wobble. Yes. Yeah,
and I'm not entirely sure what we should applaud her for or credit her for over this growth that the WNBA has had. And you can make an argument that the commissioner didn't really have anything to do with all that. Caitlin Clark was coming either way. And when Caitlin Clark came, the expansion, the viewership was going up, and the money was going up, and the expansion teams were going to come. I think a lot of people believe she kind of butchered, the Connecticut Sun deal by not selling them to the Boston group. And instead, now she's going to, they're going to be sold to the Houston group, and all because Houston submitted an expansion bid and Boston didn't. So that's one example. You also have just why were the CBA negotiations drug out as long as they possibly could have been? I've never seen, I don't think, maybe, you or producer Dimitri can remind me, but I can't remember a star player in another sports league absolutely ethering their commissioner the way that Nafisa Collier did Cathy Engelbert, last November or whenever that was. I look at all the problems that the WNBA has, and I just think there is a real lack of leadership at the top of the sport right now, and incompetence and a lack of oversight. Right. That's the biggest thing.
And isn't it interesting, Mitch, because you use the term, it trickles down from the top. And as I've already pointed out, Cathy Engelbert can't read the room. That's why everything is reactionary. It's as if she doesn't know the history of the league. She doesn't realize, hey, this situation here might be a bit of a hornet's nest. Maybe you want to preemptively get out in front of it, i.e. you don't put Caitlin Clark on the 30th anniversary poster. Let's explain to the audience, this is why she's not on it. I know that that's excessive, but again, read the room.
Right.
And to the trickle down, those officials at Cambridge Fieldhouse last Wednesday, how do you not read the room that 48 hours earlier, you nearly had a melee between the same two teams? And so you have to officiate the game tighter. You have to, at the slightest bit of malicious intent, whether it was intended or not, you have to toss the player because you do not want it to escalate. That is your job as the official. But once again, that would require the referees, just like the commissioner of the sport, to read the room.
Right. And I think, just going back to the poster thing real quick, I know people think this is a small thing, but it is a microcosm of the larger problem with the WNBA. Okay, so if there was a licensing issue with Caitlin Clark and Diana Taurasi and whoever, which actually, if you read the CBA closely, that should have been avoided, and they should have been able to put Caitlin Clark on the poster no matter what. But I'll set that to the side. Let's say there was a license issue, right?
DT on the poster too. What are we doing?
Let's say there was. Why make a poster like that if you couldn't have Diana Taurasi, your all-time leading scorer, on the poster? If you couldn't have, I'm just going to name a couple other people. Maya Moore, Elena Deladon, Simone Augustus, Sue Bird, not on the poster. Also, it's your third big bold letters on this poster. WNBA 30. Why wouldn't you put 30 players on the poster instead of 20? So when you can't put those players on the poster, why have the poster at all? All it is a collection of logos and player cutouts that someone could have made on Photoshop or Microsoft Paint 20 years ago. Why make that poster at all? Or instead, do something actually like creative and something that showed that you actually tried, and like get together a couple of your legends and a couple of your current stars. Let's put Dawn Staley and Asia Wilson and some other people in a room, Cheryl Swoops, Kelsey Plum, whatever. And let's do like a Slam magazine like style of photo shoot and like put that out there as like, this is our 30th
player. Yep.
Yeah, this is our 30th anniversary poster. Something that showed that you tried, that you actually cared, instead of this like collection of whatever that was. I just like time and time again, the WNBA keeps finding new ways to shoot itself in the foot. When they have an opportunity to score an own goal, they do it every single time. And I don't know like where it stops unless you make a change at leadership that then trickles down to the rest of the league. And I think Cathy Engelbert has kind of run her course here. And I just don't see an optimistic future for the league where she is the leader for it. I don't know. I don't even know who exactly would be like lined up, who would be a good candidate for that job.
Mm-hmm.
If you
the thing is too is like, don't forget, like Donna Orender came from a sports background and
right.
played women's basketball. Cathy Engelbert is coming from a finance background. And this is the same critique that we have in the male for professional sports leagues. And this idea of where do you pull from someone who recognizes that running a league is a people business, and you probably need to have one-on-one conversations with the people who are under your jurisdiction, or do you say it doesn't matter because it's a money business at the end of the day, and that's all we care about?
I have a name for you. I can give you a name.
Okay. Kara Lawson?
No, but related. Nina King.
Oh, yes. Be still my heart.
I just, like she's somebody who was the former chair of the NCAA Women's Basketball Committee. I think as the athletic director at Duke has showed that she has been able to navigate all of the changes in college athletics over the past 6 years when you go from COVID to the transfer portal to NIL to rev share. And I mean, almost every sport in that athletic department is successful in varying degrees, has either won conference championships, competed for national titles, and is also innovative. Like when you look at the big story of the college basketball offseason is this Duke Amazon game. And everybody's like, whoa, wait, you can do that? You can make money that way? Huh? Well, what if we tried that? So that's, just off the top of my head, I don't even know if Nina King would be interested in that job, but like, I think she would do a better job than Cathy Engelbert.
And the second biggest story of the men's college basketball offseason, arguably, was that Dusty May went to the Dallas Mavericks, and Nina King,
and
at least
John Shire did not.
Nina King, in some part, kept John Shire at home. So
indeed.
Joes, feel free to clip this segment. You can use it. We're allowing you to, because this is for our Triangle audience, but also because in the landscape of college athletics, I agree. Therefore, I obviously have to just throw Beth Getz's name out there because
I think a lot of people have like speculated, whenever Jim Phillips is done, like Nina King might be a good pick for a commissioner of the ACC or another college conference. I think she would do a great job as WNBA commissioner. And
I think Nina or Beth, just because, of course, we love Beth. Peace, love Beth. But I think that part of why, and not just because they are strong female leaders, but because part of why those two in particular, I would nominate them to be the next commissioner of the WNBA, is because both have read the room and not been afraid to go against the grain, i.e. looking at the Brian Ferentz 25-point rule and saying, thanks, but no thanks. I don't care that your daddy's been here forever. Ditto to Fran McCaffrey. We won't go down that road because there may be some CC stands out there who may have a thought or two. Point being, you look at Nina King, you look at what Beth Getz have done in the short amount of time at the helm of each of their universities in also expanding the NIL collective transfer portal era while still preserving Duke University in Iowa and the University of Iowa to still be the holistic college educational experience that they once were.
The last thing I'll add on this is I know a lot of people like to dunk on Christine Brennan. However, I will say that the WNBA keeps proving her right when she wrote that the WNBA was unprepared to deal with Caitlin Clark and continues to understand how to deal with Caitlin Clark and everything that has come with her. So that's on the W.
Mic drop. That is this week's beef of the week. And I wasn't kidding, by the way. Joe's, feel free to use part of this episode because I do think that Mitch is making a very compelling case that I think we need to, on a rainy day, maybe revisit, because I don't think that Cathy Engelbert is for long in the W if the powers that be can also finally read the room. Let's keep it moving with this week's 3-pack of picks from one Mitch Northam. It is time for Making Money with Mitch. Thanks to Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever, a Caitlin Clark-less Indiana Fever, defeating the Los Angeles Sparks handily on Saturday night. Mitch went 1-2 last week. He's 8-7 on the season. Who is on the docket for this week's 3-pack?
All right, got to stay above the 500 mark. We begin Thursday with a game at 8 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime. The Dallas Wings are visiting the struggling Connecticut Sun. The Wings are road favorites by 6.5 points. I'm going to take the Fighting Jose Fernandez's to win at Connecticut.
I like them in the bounce back. Our friend Rebecca Kopelman also said to me, thoughts watching the Wings struggle at times against the Minnesota Lynx on Sunday afternoon. Obviously, they made it a close game late, cut the deficit down to 6. I said I believe that says more about it says more about the Minnesota Lynx and Cheryl Reeve, our GOAT coach in the WNBA from earlier in the pod. But also I think it says that Jose and the Wings they're still building, and it's okay to say that. Yeah.
Still building, still working out some kinks. I still holding on to my stock, though. I think Dallas has a bright future.
Ditto. Who's at number 2?
This is Friday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ION. The Minnesota Lynx, who we talked about a lot, Cheryl Reeve, shout out to her, are at the New York Liberty, who have lost 4 of their last 5 games and are very much on the struggle bus right now. The Lynx are 5.5-point road favorites. I'm going to take the Lynx to win and cover that.
Somehow, some way, the one win in those 5 games over the Las Vegas Aces, who we'll get to here in just a second, which is why I'm rolling with the Liberty. I know this isn't part of Making Money with Mitch, but especially because this podcast will come out after the Commissioner's Cup. Chris DeMarco gets up for those Commissioner's Cup games or against the Aces. So would it surprise anybody if they win at the Barclays Center on Tuesday night and then, maybe get routed by the Lynx later in the week?
Money is the motivator there, huh?
Maybe, possibly. According to Sophie Cunningham, the money is real. The money is very real. So,
last one here is Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern. The Fever are at the Aces. This is on ESPN. I'm going to take the Fever to cover 5.5 as underdogs at the Las Vegas Aces.
As I have already tweeted out, I always expected Caitlin Clark one way or another to be held out against the Los Angeles Sparks, especially in lieu of Marina Mabry cooking it up, the chef, against the same Sparks on Thursday night. It was always going to be a runaway win for Indiana over Los Angeles on Saturday. Caitlin Clark now has 10 days to rest the back ahead of the July 5th meeting with Las Vegas. So yeah, I would agree. Give me the Fever to at least cover in Caitlin's return after perhaps she attends the Taylor Swift Travis Kelce wedding. Perhaps.
Is that happening? Is she going to go?
Well, it's on the Friday the 3rd, and they're off this whole week. So I also think that they already got married, and this whole Madison Square Garden thing is blown out of proportion, and it's not actually happening. But at the same time, this is what the prophecy foretold us, Mitch. She would sit out a game, she'll go to the wedding, she'll rise again, and then everyone's going to be like, Caitlin's great, until we have our next inevitable news cycle spin out, because that's what we do around here.
Well, going to the Taylor Swift Travis Kelce wedding would be much better received than doing the Morgan Wallen walkout. I can tell you that.
Yes, and you'll get less people angrily writing into USA Today and in your mentions about it, I'm sure. Yes. Although I'm sure all the old heads that are currently defending her will probably say she needs to focus on ball. So maybe. Possibly. To recap, Mitch's 3 picks this week in Making Money with Mitch. He has the Wings 6.5-point road favorites at the lowly Connecticut Sun on Thursday night. He has the Minnesota Lynx 5.5-point road favorites at the Liberty on Friday. And finally, the Indiana Fever 5.5 road dogs at Las Vegas. That game is Sunday at 7 p.m. It is time for last call. Any storylines that we may have missed from today's episode? Yes, repping the gear. Shout out to our friends in the Upshot League. I do encourage everybody to check out the Upshot League on YouTube. You can hear yours truly on the call for the Jacksonville Waves, who will host the Charlotte Crown for a second straight back-to-back this upcoming weekend. Only 4 teams this year, I know. But don't worry, Nashville and Baltimore are coming. Team number 7, I am told, will be announced here soon and is expected to join the league next year. That's not breaking any news. Donna Orander has said that before. So unlike some other outlets that misquoted me this morning. So yes, that is very much a fact. She has told me on the air, live for everyone to hear on YouTube. You can go back and watch the tape. Team number 7, team number 8, they are in discussions. Team number 7 should and could be playing in 2027, which will be great to see. But the 4-team league so far, just honestly, like, again, I stress this to people all the time when they're like, what type of basketball is it? Is it good? I'm like, it's every team's
What type of basketball is it?
Yeah, like, is it good? Like, are they, like, what is it? And I'm like, imagine every, like, the final roster cut, every MNBA team. Like, take all those guys. And in our case, take all the girls from the WNBA, the final roster cuts, and put them in a league together. Like, I would say that's pretty good basketball.
Well, in the NBA, it would just be take the 13th, 14th, and 15th player on every roster.
Yes. And that's what they call the G League, but I don't want to get misquoted again. So yeah, shout out to the Upshot League. Shout out to our friend Diamond Johnson, who's continuing to wage the good fight. The Greensboro Groove, unfortunately, are in last place. But the Jacksonville Waves are 11-3, and I'll be on the call. Charlotte Crown caught up with Mitch's old friend Deja Kelly today.
Deja Kelly.
The Coaches Show as well. That's available on YouTube and the Action Sports Jacks podcast feed, as well as Cheyenne Sellers, who was also on the show in studio with Ariel Hearn. And so go check that out over at Action Sports Jacks. But shout out to our friends at the Upshot League. We know that they like to listen to this program as well as talk it up. So we appreciate all of you guys. Back to the W. Somehow, some way, we haven't talked about A'ja Wilson enough, I've been told. 30 points, 15 boards, 4 steals, 3 blocks in 34 minutes on Sunday. That was just Sunday. Pretty good basketball player.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Shout out to A'ja. We already mentioned it, but Plum Dog is out for a month. Did you also see the photos of Cam Brink's ankle? Are the Los Angeles Sparks going to be tanking for Madison Booker, Juju Watkins?
I would just say longtime listeners of this podcast will remember that I injured my ankle at the 2025 Final Four in Tampa.
Yes.
And then drove home
podcast.
to North Carolina. That is podcast lore here. And then drove home to North Carolina on it. And my ankle looked disgusting. Cam Brink's ankle looks worse. And didn't think I would say that, but oh boy, it does not look good.
She was worried about the nose, and in reality, it was actually her ankle.
That ankle looks not good.
Yeah, and we still don't really know what's up with Kelsey Plum either, right? I mean, is it
thoughts and prayers to the Sparks?
Lower leg? Yeah, it's a roster that has talent, but it's just not working out right now. And I think a lot of that is they don't have a lead guard, and story for another time. Sorry to the Sparks. What did you think? And this was an honorable mention for this week's Beef of the Week, Mitch. What did you think of the viral Zapruder film that was the Atlanta Dream Seattle Storm post-game in which Angel Reese would not give her former college teammate Flau'jae Johnson a hug?
I thought that I didn't really think that was a big deal. I thought Angel was more kind of saying like, yo, not right now. Like, I'll catch up with you like later. I think it's been out there that like Angel and Flau'jae are not super close, but there's not a beef there to my knowledge. There was, of course, like people will remember the beginning of Angel's senior year. There was a back and forth between their moms on Instagram during Angel's senior year at LSU. But then I remember when LSU lost to Iowa in the Elite Eight in that post-game press conference, and Angel was like crying at the press conference table, Flau'jae is the one like consoling her and then talking like very positively about her leadership and all that stuff. So like I don't think there's anything super there, so to speak.
Also, their moms arguing on Instagram is the most 2025, 2026 thing I've heard on this program yet. And there's been a lot of contemporary lore, if you may.
Yes, that would have been in like November 2023, like when there was that whole thing where like Angel was like missing from LSU for a couple weeks, and yeah.
Was academic, wasn't it? Like that wasn't. Yeah. Okay.
I don't even think they ever said what the reason was.
I remember the rumors were it was academic. Like she wasn't.
I have heard some things that I cannot publicly say on this podcast, but yes.
But hey, listen,
there was a thing.
She played the basketball season, drafted top 10. They went to the Elite Eight. We keep it moving. Also, apologies to the Atlanta Dream, the latest victim of if we lead with you on the Women's Basketball Podcast, you inevitably are about to go on a 3-game losing streak or somehow
apparently
yourself. So apologies to Cheryl Reeve if a losing streak ensues this week. We tried to save you. Let's keep it moving. We already mentioned GM, president, coach Sloot is back, and the Chicago Sky now have a hope and a prayer. What did you think, Mitch? Jovana Nojic, the sensation who in the first week of the WNBA season this year, we proclaimed, the Rookie of the Year race is over. Let's check out the latest European import in Phoenix. She's awesome. Now she's going to go play in Russia. She asked for her release. Like, kind of weird, right?
Yeah. I thought this was really weird. I was reading Alexa Philippou's story over at ESPN, who says that her agent is refuting a report that she's leaving Phoenix to go rejoin her team in Europe and to rejoin the Serbian national team. And her agent says that the goal is to return to Phoenix in 2027. But all they're saying is that this was for personal reasons. And so, I don't know, I find that kind of weird. There's a lot of vague there.
Yeah, a lot of vague there. But then you couple that with all the other drama going on coming out of Phoenix, and it's, I think they're two isolated incidents, but the fact that they're happening the same week is rather curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Phoenix not having a great year.
Yeah. No. Well, they beat the Indiana Fever. Hang the banner once. We'll see if it happens again this upcoming or 2 weeks from now. Mitch, before we get out of here, what's coming up besides your upcoming little jaunt back to Maryland over at USA Today on the women's basketball front?
I don't think I have much right now. We're working on a couple things, but nothing super glaring. I think that I have coming out immediately to point people to. So yeah, just keep your eyes on USA Today and Twitter and all that good stuff, and you'll see my work.
And of course, make sure you lock in this weekend. In addition to all the WNBA action, the Upshot League live on YouTube, over-the-air affiliates. Apparently, the Scripps partnership means some of our games are on Amazon Prime, Mitch. So I guess I'm going to be on Amazon Prime at some point in time. So that's pretty cool too.
That's neat.
You learn something new every day, which we look forward to learning with you each and every week here on the Women's Basketball Podcast. We have some fun here too. Hopefully we entertain you a little bit as well. Make sure you make sure you subscribe to OG Triangle Media and wherever you get this podcast. Until next week, he's Mitch. I'm Mia saying we'll catch you next week.
Deuces.